What up, my fellow Knicks fans? This is your guy Marcellus Ease, and don't panic quite yet. Now, if you guys live in the local New York City area, you are aware of the ongoing beef between James Dolan and the New York Daily News. And this ongoing beef has actually trickled over to the rest of the media outlets throughout the country, as some of the media members kind of present this us versus them mentality when it comes to covering the New York Knicks. Now, this guy, Adrian Wojnarowski today, aka WOJ, has actually dropped a story saying that Steve Mills is setting up David Fizdale to be the fall guy. Now, he got on ESPN today to further elaborate on his story, and there's a few holes in his story as I kind of question, did he even fully listen to the press conference that Steve Mills and Scott Perry had earlier today? But you guys check it out.
Reacting to a story from our Adrian Wojnarowski and Malika Andrews saying that Steve Mills, quote, has started to lay the internal groundwork for Coach Fizdale's eventual dismissal, which is very big. Welcome to the Jump, Woj. And I want to give everyone a heads up. Woj also very hardworking, the Gordon Hayward story. So if you see him tweet in real time here, that's probably what that is. And that's
AKA, yo, this guy is covering a ton of stories. So best believe, he probably most likely rushed through this story too quick. You guys will see the holes in a few.
It's lucky too. Woj, tell us a little bit, though, about this Knicks story. How does that jibe sort of with what you've been told, that Fizz is out there this morning saying he has assurances, he's got a contract, he's had Perry supportive behind him?
Well, David Fizdale is going to be a company guy. He learned that in Miami. You back management regardless of what might have happened the previous night in a news conference, but there's no question. You remember, Steve Mills has survived several coaching hirings and dismissals in New York. His overall record is well under 500, 150 games plus, I believe.
And Steve Mills, he's basically Dolan's right-hand man when it comes to MSG's cash flow. He's the money guy. He just makes sure everything's rolling in, cash is rolling in, and he's fine. Other than that, I mean, when Steve Mills in 2013 took over the president role, the GM role, he's not that good as far as basketball operations. He got finessed by that GM up in Toronto with that Andre Bargnani trade. He just overall, his basketball IQ is not there. But when it comes to the operational side, especially for, handling the cash flow, he's really good at that. I see why Dolan, he has Dolan's ear.
He has consistently got the ear of owner Jim Dolan, and what he said publicly is very consistent with what he's saying privately, which is they have put together a good team for David Fizdale. This team should be winning.
And that right there is false. They never said that in the press conference. They said this team should be good enough to be competing and not be underperforming against teams like Detroit without Reggie Jackson, Tim Frazier, Derrick Rose, no Blake Griffin, and we're losing for the whole game. Those things shouldn't be happening. Same thing with the game against Sacramento. Us being down by 20 for the whole second half, those things shouldn't be happening. The team should be more competitive, especially with the veteran presence that they brought in. Guys like Marcus Morris, Julius Randle, those guys are not used to being down by 20, 30 points against bad teams. These are the type of things that, they kind of went over in the presser. I'm gonna put this back for you guys to listen to what he says.
His overall record is well under 500, 150 games plus, I believe. And so he has consistently got the ear of owner Jim Dolan, and what he said publicly is very consistent with what he's saying privately, which is they have put together a good team for David Fizdale. This team should be winning. Now,
see, right there, that's not what they said in the press conference. Scott Perry especially, he mentioned the lack of consistency, sporadic efforts. They want all the efforts to be for all four quarters. Even Steve Mills mentioned that. He said the product on the floor just isn't good for all four quarters. You got to find a way to get guys playing hard consistently, not just for 2 quarters. I mean, if you've seen the presser, these were the things that these guys were talking about. They were just talking about the level of play. The team that we have this year shouldn't be doing the same things that the team from last year was doing, which was being down by 20 points, getting blown out by bad teams. These are the type of things that shouldn't be happening. They also mentioned the Knicks record. It's not about the record. That specifically came, I believe, from Steve Mills' mouth. He said it's not about the record. It's about the quality of the product on the floor. See, that's what I'm saying. I'm not sure if Woj actually checked out the press conference. He kind of just wrote a salacious title, Fizdale, being set up to be the fall guy, and just, it kind of just went with the inside information he had, but it's just too much lack of context in it.
That is counter to, I think, a lot of the conventional wisdom around the NBA. Other executives, coaches in the league were stunned by that news conference, the timing of it.
They weren't stunned by the news conference. No other executive around the league was sitting there watching the Knicks news conference. They read your report and they were stunned by your report. That's what you meant to say.
Tone of it, while your coach is in the locker room talking to the team, to march in and do that, it was unusual.
Yeah, I mean, that was, to me, one of the also really super interesting parts of this piece you wrote, because you had that line saying, Mills is selling James Dolan on a roster constructed to be highly competitive in the East. And then you had other reporting in the story there saying rival executives and scouts see the roster as unbalanced and, quote, slow of foot. So how does that all jibe together, especially with Mills telling Dolan, hey, this should be a competitive team in the Eastern Conference?
See, there's a lack of context. He should have said the Knicks are going to be highly competitive night in, night out. It doesn't mean they're going to win, but they're going to be a better product than they were the last season. See, when the other GMs read that, they're just like, yeah, your rosters have holes, but they don't know that the way it's constructed is that the Knicks are trying to be competitive. They know they don't have like a great product to be a deep playoff team, but they don't expect to win 10 games this season. It's just no way.
Well, in the end, this is a coach who has 2.5 years left on his contract, and this is what happens when the team is not playing well. You're not going to see Steve Mills here really take much responsibility for the fact that this is, that they've had Mitchell Robinson out, that Frank Ntilikina has trouble keeping, the speed of opponents is tough. You saw it last night with Sexton and Garland. And right now, especially with Kristaps Porzingis coming back Thursday, what the Garden could look like, sound like. He comes back, plays well.
How does he not mention Alfred Payton and Dennis Smith Jr.? Dennis Smith Jr. dealing with family issues, Alfred Payton with the hamstring. They actually started Alfred Payton to begin the season. That these guys literally only played like maybe 2 games fully for the Knicks, and then they were out. See, like I said, these guys don't really cover the team. They're too busy covering LeBron and the Lakers and telling people that the Lakers might win a championship, which ain't going to happen. And, they don't really cover the Knicks. And then it's only going to be a salacious headline when it comes to the Knicks with them. This guy, there's a lot of holes in his story. How could he not mention Dennis Smith Jr. and Alfred Payton, pretty much the 2 main guys that this team had slated to be the point guard of the team?
And that trade that is on Mills and Scott Perry's resume last season, and how far it is clear to set them back?
No, then they didn't have any choice. Porzingis wanted to go. That wasn't an option. He did not want to be here. It was either lose him for nothing or make a deal.
You saw this was a precursor last night to getting out in front of it and putting it on the coach. That's where the Knicks are right now, Rach.
All that and this guy does not cover the Knicks at all. It's just whenever there's some mayhem going over there, that's when he's gonna go and try to create some sort of narrative on the Knicks and try to piece together what he can real quick, because he's too busy covering the Lakers and other teams that are competing for a championship. I don't blame him. He's only one person, but there's a lot of holes and lack of context in his whole story.
Is there any sense of how quickly the Knicks would intend to move in this situation?
Well, at 2-8, this is a team that, especially at home, they've gotten blown out twice now at home, Sacramento, Cleveland, and I think the home blowouts, certainly, put some gravity on this. They did just win at Dallas. They played well at Boston, who's been the elite in the East, but those bad home losses certainly have played a factor in the optics of this 2-8 start. And for David Fizdale to make it beyond this week, he probably needs to not have more of those.
Now, unless Steve Mills is lying in the press conference, He actually said he had full confidence and patience with Fizdale. So they just pretty much showed up to the presser. Either James Dolan told him to do that or Steve Mills set that presser up. But they just basically said, losing to Detroit, losing to Sacramento, then losing to Cleveland, that's unacceptable. The Knicks had a nice, I don't want to say a nice loss because no loss is really nice, but they had a nice, tight, competitive game against Boston where they lost by 2 points. Jason Tatum hit that step back. And then, it was a good game. Overall, it's a good product on the floor. Just for the Knicks to go to the next game against Sacramento and get blown out by 20 points for the whole second half. That's pretty much what the presser was about. Those type of losses are not acceptable.
But there's no question he is very much on the clock with management, and they are putting this squarely on him. They made that clear last night.
No, they're not. Then he's not on the clock. He's on the clock for those type of losses. That's not acceptable. But if the Knicks are playing tight, close games and they're losing some of them, like that's fine. They're not really focused on the record. Like I said, during the press conference, they mentioned the record. They're not focused on the record. They're mainly focused on the product that's on the floor and the lack of consistency for 4 quarters. Like I said, I really question if Woj really dug in deep to what they said in that presser. Because like I said, he's too busy covering the Lakers and, LeBron and such and Kawhi. I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, it is hard to really express to people who don't do this day to day just how rare a press conference like that was last night from that organization that's been sort of secretive and kept management out of the public eye to do it this early.
They do that because you guys, the media, you guys are like, it's almost like the Knicks are a beautiful girlfriend and she has a lot of bad friends and they're always in her ear, don't do this, don't do that. And they kind of ruin the relationship. It go vice versa for guys also. That's pretty much the media. They're always in other players' ears about the Knicks or just even the fan bases, the way they narrate stories about the Knicks. And that's because of James Dolan's authority over the media in New York. Like I said, a lot of the media members, they have this us versus them mentality when it comes to just the Knicks.
In this season, I think this is absolutely fascinating. And of course, the Knicks beat the Mavericks when they played in Dallas. But as you mentioned, when Kristaps Porzingis comes to town, it's going to be an entirely different story. Woj, I know you're working like 4 other stories right now. So if you get
right there, he's working 4 other stories. How can he get down to the nitty gritty with the Knicks that are actually a rebuilding team? He can't get down to the nitty gritty for a rebuilding team that no one outside of New York maybe is not interested in. He's not going to do that.
Breaking news later. We will be checking back with those reports as well. We really appreciate you taking time out to do this today now.
Yeah, it is what it is, man. Thank you, Woj. It is what it is. You guys let me know what you think. Like I said, most of the press conference was about the team not being consistent for 4 quarters and the product on the floor. They're, the Knicks, right now, like I said, they're competing against Brooklyn for to be relevant. And they don't want the same type of product that they had last year, where they had a team that was just losing to bad teams by 20 points, getting blown out. They don't want that type of season. The Knicks they don't want that 10-win season. They spent enough money. They got enough veteran presence, Taj Gibson, Julius Randle, Morris. They got enough guys, high draft picks, to actually have a decent competing team. They may not win a bunch of games, but at least every game that they play hard. That's pretty much what the presser was about. But we'll see what happens. The next 10 games are going to be pretty important just to make sure that they don't have any type of bad losses like that, because they got a couple winnable games, and hopefully they don't, have the same type of blowout situation like in Detroit, Sacramento, and Cleveland. So it is what it is. You guys let me know what you think. You guys stay safe. Peace.